सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Back here after a break for some of you, and for the rest of us it's a continuation. And let us see, I think we are in verse 50. And as I said, to mark the occasion of a halfway point, the author, some Shankaracharya, not Adi Shankara, he has packed the verse with so many quotations from the Upanishad. The other thing I would like to mention is that the verses 50 to 53 or 54 expound what in the tradition is called Pratibimba Nyaya, or the maxim or theory or concept of the so-called reflected, quote unquote, reflected consciousness. And we have been doing this actually. This discussion has been central to our study of the Panchadashi 15th chapter, which we have just completed. But it bears relevance here also, and it's always like that, you know, the Shrutis kind of triangulate and land on the same thing. No matter what you're studying, you find the same themes being studied at the same time. So here, in the tradition, we struggle with how to talk about this consciousness, which is oneself, which is Satchidanandam Brahma we know. And how to talk about this is a very big challenge, because no matter what you say about it, you come up short. Consciousness is like ... What can you fill in the blank? Space. Space means what? Space again is, is a karya. It's an effect. So that analogy only works for a little bit. It doesn't work for the whole time. Then what else can you compare it to? Sun. It's like the sun. Why? Self-lit, self-luminous. So therefore it is like the sun. That also doesn't go very far. So because we are talking of something unconditioned by space, by time, by object, and because we are talking of something that cannot be objectified, like even space, and because we are talking about something that is in fact the truth of the subject, the content of the subject, then we will always fall short. No matter how many analogies, it leaves all the Vedanta scholars and poets wringing their hands in dismay. Even after having composed the work, they will say, we have fallen short, there is no way to do this. And so, but one thing that is there in the tradition, there are certain, customary ways of looking at this very sticky question: if Brahman is limitless, ... and here itself, all the warning bells should go off with the word if. If Brahman is limitless, it is limitless. What do you mean if Brahman is limitless? See, this is what I'm saying, the language really falls short. Okay, I amend myself. So what are you going to say now? When Brahman is limited, what do you mean when? It is not trapped by time. The word when presupposes that you are in the spell of the time matrix. So it is. So you cannot say when, you cannot say if, And then so anyhow, somehow you struggle, and somehow, regardless of all the pronouns, prepositions, you come up with something. Okay, okay, don't split the words, just listen. All right, say it. If Brahman is limitless, this is the sticky question, then what? Then how come it is become this universe? Which is what? Become, again within heavy quotes. Become this universe which is full of finite names, finite forms, everything that comes to an end more quickly than we thought. How is this even possible if Brahman is limitless? So we cannot say if, we cannot say when, so there is no conditional thing. So this is our problem. And so in the but this question persists, even though you may not be able to articulate it. The question of how this Brahman, which is the truth of oneself, which is limitless, which is the cause of the universe, and we can continue, which is all knowledge, which is Ananda, which is the only source of all existence, how did it, quote unquote, manifest as become this universe? And how does it, okay, it hasn't become this universe, okay, I grant you that, but how does it manifest as this universe? These are all very, very, these are all pervasive questions which the scholars and saints in the traditions have repeatedly tried to tackle and make it more palatable, really, assimilable. Because here is where one gets flummoxed. If you are talking of Nirupadhika Brahman without any upadhis means names and forms, without any, as though unconditioned by Brahman, without any upadhis, I can kind of wrap my mind around the reality that there may be something that is nameless, formless, and then that is unconditioned by this universe. But I can kind of wrap my mind around it, but it does not solve the basic problem of sorrow centered on the self, fear centered on the self. Why? Because so what if there is this Brahman which is Satchidananda, which is all pervasive, which is the truth of everything? So what? If it, what has that got to do with me? Brahman is happily out of this situation. It's that here Brahman as Ishvara. Ishvara, having created this miserable world, has repaired to a place, let us call it heaven, and built a penthouse for himself, and then he is sitting there happily watching everyone suffer. What kind of a thing is this? This is something, this is actually the bread and butter of many theologies, including in the Hindu theology. We have this, if we can call it that. In the Hindu philosophy also we have this, what is that? This duality, Dvaita, where people do believe that Bhagavan is somewhere, is Brahman. Brahman is a manifestation, Bhagavan is a manifestation of Brahman, and untouched by this universe is sitting somewhere in this Goloka, Vrindavan, and then there, what is the point? The point is to lose this body, this horrible body, who needs it anyway, and then go and play that stick dance, that you do for Navaratri with Lord Krishna there. That is the goal of human life. And in other theologies also, that is the goal of human life. So what is this human life? Is it a bus stop that you are here? If the point of life is afterlife, then what are we doing here? This is not some kind of a train station that you are waiting to go into some kind of afterlife. Not, this is something we need to think about. And so therefore, this, in the tradition, there are two theories to understand this. To understand this very sticky question, two questions. One is the relationship of Bhagavan to this universe. What is Bhagavan's business as far as this universe is concerned? Is he, she a participant? Is he, she an observer? Is he, she both or neither? And then the second question, is what is the relationship of Bhagavan to this? Yours truly, who is searching, who is the seeker, who is feeling completely unprotected from the elements and in-laws, outlaws, all these forces. And then who is this I, and what is the relationship of Bhagavan? So then, Ishvara's relationship with the Jagat has to be somehow accounted for, even to go forward faithfully in Vedanta study, and it has to be accounted for in a manner that does not, that is faithful to Vedanta and the body of knowledge that unfolds this, and in a manner that makes sense to the individual. These two things have to be done. So, what is Bhagavan's relationship to the universe? If he is the maker, then what is the material? And if he has quote unquote become the universe, then does it mean that there is no Bhagavan? Are we in a pantheistic theology? Is this the situation? And then the next and even more important question is, what is the relationship of Bhagavan to the jiva, to this sad, bad, mad individual who is crying all the time? What is the relationship? And of course, it has to be faithful to the vision of the Upanishad. You are this Ishvara. Yeah, big deal. Then how come I am upset? If I am Ishvara, I should be, I should not even be having this conversation with you. Then how come I am upset? How come I am constricted? How come I am lost? And so, the tradition, there are two mainstay ways of looking at this, and one of them is called Pratibimbavada. Bhagavan's relationship to this body-mind-sense complex known as the individual, A, and then Bhagavan's relationship to this manifest universe called the Jagat. So the first one is called Pratibimbavada, the theory of reflected consciousness, and the second one is called Avachedavada, the theory of, what is that called? As though conditioned consciousness. Both of these theories have their problems, big problems. You know why? Because you're trying to explain that which is limitless with the finite imagery and analogy. But then why start explaining? Let us just give it up. No, you can't give it up, because they are very, very needed to have some kind of an understanding, and that understanding happens in the course of Vedanta exposure, but it happens in a way that is self-reflexive, in the sense that since the self is self-evident, one understands this very clearly. This is the idea. So the theory of reflected consciousness is going to be discussed, let's see, 50, 51, 52 and 53. And after that, being a faithful author, he is going to switch over to the discussion of Upadhivada, or the Avachedavada, the theory of as though conditioned consciousness. As I said, both of them have problems. So, before we embark on the Shruti Vakyas and verse 50, we have to see what this theory of reflected consciousness posits. What is the big deal about it? Well, it seems to effortlessly help us understand. This is one of the pros. So first we always talk of the pros, and then we come to the cons. Okay. So what is a big pro? The big merit of this theory of reflected consciousness, Pratibimbavada, is that through examples of the sun and water, etc., it effortlessly posits a wonderful explanation of how that one sun, that one Brahman, one Ishvara has, as though quote unquote, become many without undergoing any change. Just like you have 10 pots of water, and then you have one sun, and you put all the 10 dishes of water on the terrace, or on the ground, and then you look inside each one, there is a sun reflected. In a small pot you see a chota sun, in a big pot you see a bada sun, big sun, small sun, and then in a turbid water you see turbid sun, and in a ripple filled water surface you see a rippled sun, and in a fragmented water surface full of waves and everything like the ocean you see a fragmented sun. Now the small sun, big sun, fragmented sun, rippled sun are all as though because it is not that the sun is fragmented or rippled or cut up or turbid, the sun is sun. And then so this theory, the Pratibambivada, accounts for the fact that there are small jivas, like a small glowworm with a little bit of light, and it's the same light, and then it all depends on what is called the medium of reflection. So the medium of reflection is what? The mind, of course, buddhi and the mind. So the buddhi is the medium of reflection. So they wax eloquent. Now that they have put this, forth, then they wax eloquent further. If the buddhi is the medium of reflection, and if someone is completely down with all kinds of difficulties in terms of one's attitude towards oneself, towards the universe, towards everyone else, then that sun will look eclipsed in such a buddhi. And what is the eclipse? The eclipse is one's own raga, dveshas and other difficulties internally. So the sun will look eclipsed. It is not that the sun is eclipsed. The eclipse is, the buddhi is eclipsed, and so the sun of Ishvara, Jnanam, Bhagavan, etc. cannot obtain in this buddhi that is challenged by all these difficulties. This is so this is this is one of the pros of the theory of reflected consciousness, because it not only talks about the size of the quote unquote medium of reflection, and so therefore if the so therefore Brahman obtains Brahman obtains in certain ways, in certain sorry, I shouldn't use the word upadhi here, in certain mediums of reflection, and then this is its pro. And then another merit of this theory of reflected consciousness is that it effectively says that the clarity of the medium of reflection is what accounts for the manner in which the sun of consciousness is reflected. So if the medium is ultra clear, then Brahman shines as the truth of oneself. If the medium is turbid, then some more work needs to be done in terms of clarifying the medium through what? Prayer, karma yoga, other practices, sadhanas, what have you. Okay. So this is something which is very, very beautifully, this is what is the benefit of understanding this theory of reflected consciousness. Then what is the demerit? The first demerit, which it also shares with the other theory, is that what is the reality of the reflecting medium. So if we have two things, the sun of consciousness and the reflecting medium signified by the buddhi, then where is Advaita? Bye bye, you have to wave Advaita bye bye. And if Advaita is gone, you may as well have a big hanky to weep into, because that Advaita is the cause of sorrow. So with the same hanky you can wave Advaita bye bye and then wipe your eyes with it. Two in one. So what kind of a hanky panky is this? This is something which is very funny, extremely funny. How to go beyond this? Where to go? Because what if the reflecting in the example, the pot of water belongs to the same reality as the sun. Both belong to the empirical reality. Both are destroyed. Nashvara swabhava. Nashvara means destructible. They are destroyed. The sun, of course, is little more long lasting, several millennia, but then it also goes, then it becomes a blue dwarf, red dwarf, yellow dwarf, and then no dwarf. Hiram Naham Satya hai, that's also gone. And then what? Then the pot, of course, is gone, and then someone digs it up afterwards. Some shard of the pot is dug up by archaeologists several hundred years later. This is interesting. They will have a special piece of tweezers to pick it up slowly, and then it will end up in some museum, not as a pot, as a piece of some civilization. Oh, this is how they lived. Oh, it has some piece of food on it. Let's see what they ate. This is what they say. So, and this is true. They found one ancient feeding bottle. They found parts of it. So it is made of clay, and it has got a little belly here and a little handle. Half of it was broken, and a little kind of a piece coming out like that, which the baby could purse its lips around that and drink the milk. So of course they had to reconstruct the picture from the shards that were found, and then out of curiosity they scraped inside and they found traces of ancient milk. So this is what you can do. But anyhow, the pot is gone, and the babies that drank out of it, long gone, everything gone. So then the point is, the sun and the water and the pot used here to illustrate the theory of reflected consciousness belong to the same order of reality, i.e. the empirical reality. Empirical reality. Vyavaharika satta means everyday reality. This is what they belong to. Transactional reality, it is available for transaction. But here in the example, you have the sun-like consciousness, and then you have the empirical reality, which does not belong to the empirical reality. The sun-like consciousness is not part of this empirical reality. It is part of paramarthika, not even part. It is paramarthika, meaning it is what is called absolute reality. It is the only thing that is real, and everything else is what we can't call it non-existent. So we say as though existent. Dependent on this reality alone, everything exists. So how can you compare the sun in the same sentence? How can you use the sun, which is all pervasive, which is the only thing exists, along with something that depends upon the very sun for its existence? How can you do that in the same sentence? Not possible, and it leads to a lot of confusion about the order of reality. So this is one of the problems with the theory of reflected consciousness. Then what is the other problem? The other problem is the reflecting medium itself. So reflecting medium, what is the reality of the reflecting medium? If the reflecting medium is mithya, then it really doesn't matter if it is a dependent reality. Then so even the most the most clouded of minds, clouded by raga, dvesha, strong preferences and prejudices, even the most crowded of minds, they will do what? So they will also suffer, and they will also be we really cannot explain. They are also there, and so what? So we can't really explain why Satchidanandatvam is not understood. We can't explain. And then the final problem with the theory of reflected consciousness is the word reflection. Oh, I'm just a reflection. I'm not as good as the original. So then we have this internal split at the level of understanding between original consciousness, which is like the original sun in the example, and the reflected consciousness in the pot of water. That which obtains in the pot of water can never be real, as is shown in the story of baby Rama. Lord Rama, when he was a baby, badly wanted the moon. One full moon night, he pointed to the moon and insisted on getting it right there and then. Everybody, all the palace attendants, everyone tried to soothe the baby, and he was just adamant, and he was crying himself red in the face. And so then Mother Kaushalya had an idea, and she asked for a big dish to be brought out, which was put in the palace courtyard. And the baby crawled over to the dish as soon as it saw the moon reflected in the water. And he wanted to hold and catch hold of the moon, and it would disappear. And he would look up, oh, the moon is whole, and look down, oh, I got it again. And then, so it's very clear from the story that Lord Rama could not catch the moon as a baby. Why? Because it's the reflected moon. It's not the same as the quote-unquote original moon. So the theory of reflected consciousness has within it the danger that what I am in terms of this buddhi, mind, etc., I'm not as good as the original thing. I'm just a reflection. Already one feels lowly about oneself. I'm not as good. Ishvara, where are you? Why did you make me like this? And what were you thinking? And why do I have these problems? Why do I have these health issues? And then if there are not health issues, there are certainly wealth issues. Yeah, because that is all, it all goes together. And so why do I have wealth issues? And then some people say, oh, you are lucky, you're only crying about one issue. I have health and wealth issues both. And then the third one says, oh, I can't even talk about my issues. They are stealth issues. They cannot even be talked about. And all these problems. And so why? Well, because I'm just a mere reflection. This feeling of not being good enough as Ishvara is already there. And the theory of reflected consciousness has the danger, if it is not handled properly, if it is not taught properly, and if it is not appreciated properly, has the danger of just reinforcing the Dvaita, the duality. What fun is that? No fun at all. Okay, so now we come to the next theory, which is what? As though conditioned consciousness. Now, in this theory, the proponents of this theory, and for full disclosure, in interest of full disclosure, myself included, and so the proponents of this theory like to use the word as though right from the beginning. So we won't even call it the theory of conditioned consciousness. We will say the as though theory of the as though conditioned consciousness. So this is right from the beginning. A disclaimer is issued. So the proponents of the theory of conditioned consciousness are vachalas. Vachalas means they are very clever in how they talk. Okay. So and so what do? So they talk like this, as though, as though, as though. And so what is this as though conditioned consciousness? So the consciousness again is all pervasive. There is no question here, because that's what the Shruti says. The teachings talk about consciousness as limitless, free of all, of any kind of limitations. Time-wise, free of limitations. Space-wise, free of limitations. Object-wise, also free of limitations. And so therefore, this all-pervasive, all-knowing and everlasting, eternal, infinite consciousness has somehow become this jiva, has somehow, quote-unquote, become this universe. This is how has this happened? So we say that it is all because of the nature of the quote-unquote upadhi, or the as though conditioning agent. So what does this entail? What is the example that is given? And our trusty pot comes to our aid. So just like the space in the pot, here now the water is not filled in the pot, here it is space. So just like there is space in the pot, pot space. Let us call it pot space. So if the pot had a human mind, the pot would inevitably think. What would it inevitably say and think? It would inevitably say and think itself to be tiny. The pot space. Pot space has a human mind and it says, oh, I am so small. I am minuscule. I am not good for anything at all. And then a space guru comes, not a space doubt guru, okay? And the space guru teaches the pot. You are space, you are not pot space. Really? But space is God. At best I feel odd. Space is the cause. I am just because. Space is all. I am small. No, 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 you are space. Everything about you is space. And you don't have to break the upadhi, aka the name and form called pot, in order to be one with space. In fact, is the pot in space? Or is space in pot? Think about it. So the teacher had studied with a Zen master also in addition to a Vedanta. That's why the space guru is talking like this. Ends with a koan for the pot space to reflect. And so this is the theory of as though conditioned consciousness. So the word as though, heavily used in this theory, shows that right from the start, the mithyatvam of the jagat and the mithyatvam, the mithyaness of the name and form are all accounted for right at the beginning. The conditioning agent, so to speak, is not belonging to the same order of reality, so it has nothing to worry about Brahman, making Brahman into a tiny brain like that of an earthworm, which doesn't know if it's going or coming, and then but still an intelligence, the intelligence of Brahman is there for the things that it is supposed to do. What is the earthworm supposed to do? Dig. And it does that very well. You try to do that, you will not succeed. And then so it does, people who do this vermiculture, etc., they rely completely on the chit, which is the earthworm. Chit expressed as the earthworm, which aerates the soil and nurtures the soil, etc., And then from our standpoint, we'll say it has a tiny brain. It cannot understand physics. Well, it understands certain things better than you do, and it has far less problems than you have. Okay, and so therefore, the theory of conditioned consciousness looks at these upadhis from the tiniest of creatures, even an atomic creature, all the way to Indra, the Lord of the universe. It's all just various upadhis. The conditioning agents include the size of the body, the size of the mind, the buddhi, etc., in which this all-pervasive Brahman, as though morphing into that particular body-mind sense complex, quote-unquote, reflects, or we should say, abides in this upadhi. So this is the theory of, as though conditioned consciousness. This also falls short. What about the medium? Why is it the medium of where this conditioning agent? What about this medium, which is the conditioning agent? And what is its reality? And aren't we really espousing a certain kind of Dvaita? All these questions remain. And so this is we prefer this here, because then we don't have to backtrack and explain the original and the reflected, the difference between the original and reflected Brahman. that they are one and the same. We don't have to do that. That is why we prefer, in our parampara, in our lineage, we have a slight preference for this theory. But I think it's important to study both these theories for a better understanding and depth of understanding of Brahman. And so the 50th verse, let us look at the verse now, talks about this theory, and let us see what it has to say. रूपं रूपं प्रतीदं प्रतिफलनवशात् प्रातिरूप्यं प्रपेदे ह्येको द्रष्टा द्वितीयो भवति च सलिले सर्वतोऽनन्तरूपः इन्द्रो मायाभिरास्ते श्रुतिरिति वदति व्यापकं ब्रह्म तस्मात् जीवत्वं यात्यकस्मादतिविमलतरे बिम्बितं बुद्ध्युपाद्धौ. Again, the verses are a mouthful of Sanskrit, and the first quotation we already saw the last week or last time when we had this class, that it comes from the Kathopanishad, Kathopanishad 229, and it comes, and then what does it say? It gives the example of the what is it called, fire. And what does this fire do? The fire comes in various forms. When it enters, when it enters the earth, it assumes various forms. And then what does it do? In the gas stove, it is controllable. You can make it high, you can make it low, and you can congratulate yourself, what a wonderful cook I am. This turned out very well. And actually it is fire who cooked. And then, having cooked, you eat that meal, and the fire is hidden in the stomach. Jatharagni, Vaishvanara is its name. And then what does it do? It is just very happily sitting there, and then it is cooking your food again. Cooked once in the form of the external fire, and cooked again. Twice cooked. Like they say, twice born is Brahmana, and so twice cooked here. And so the cooked food is then cooked again in terms of Pachana Kriya. So this Pachana Kriya means the act of digestion is the cooking. So when the stomach is roaring with hunger, it is Bhagavan Vaishvanara. So then you offer an internal yajna, Swaha. And in between, since the food is tasty, you say aha and then swaha. So this is an internal yajna. That's why one has to be very mindful when one eats. And that's why you can never use the expression junk food in the same word. You can't use junk and food. This is not a garbage can. This is actually a yajna kunda, a place where yajna is being done. So this is fire in the form of the Jatharagni, the stomach fire, and then fire also in the form of temperature. You just have to touch a person, and when you touch a person, you immediately are saying, "Hello, Lord Agni." See what a culture this is, what a tradition. You are never away from Bhagavan. And so that's why the name of fire is Jata Veda. Jate Jate Vidyate. That Jate means being, as soon as one is born, one understands its presence. So a gynecologist bringing a baby into the universe, what does the gynecologist do? She or he first touches the baby. Okay, not a stillbirth, alive. But it's not crying. Let's give it a little spank. Gives it a little spank, and then the lungs unclog and the baby bawls. And what is the baby saying? Why am I here? I was enjoying a wonderful concert in heaven, a dance concert with the nymphs, Urvashi, Rambha, Menaka. They were all dancing. And suddenly the punya got over, and then there were all these desires to be born to these parents and to have a body to be able to fulfill these desires. And so here the baby is immediately regretting its decision and wishing itself elsewhere. So, jate jate vidyate jata vedaha. So, just like the fire has taken on many forms, and since we are using the theory of reflected consciousness, we have to use the word reflect. Since the fire is reflected in so many appliances and so many things, including one's own body, differently. Rupam rupam, form after form, pratirupyam prapede. Prapede has gained. Pratiphalanat, due to the fruitioning, as it were, of many names and forms. So, pratirupyam, what is this pratirupyam? Pratirupasya bhavaha pratirupyam. So, pratirupyam means the one, it has taken on many names and forms. And prapede has taken on. So the other source of this same quotation, Rupam Rupam Pratirupam Babhuva Tadetad Achakshanaya Indro Mayabhihi Pururupam Iyate. This is from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 4.3.32, with a section called, as I said last time, Madhu Vidya. And then they have translated it as honey doctrine. I don't know why it is a doctrine. So it is actually the knowledge of oneself as sweet. That's all it is. So, but somehow, the translators feel, I suppose, some pressure to sound erudite, and then they translate it in very scholarly ways. So, what is this Madhu Vidya? It has a very interesting story. And I feel like telling the story only because Anandagiri, whose Tika we are studying side by side sometimes, also goes and tells the story. So I think I should also tell the story. So what is this story about? This story is about how this word Rupam Rupam Pratirupam Prapede was talked about as a part of this Vidya. So there was one sage, a highly evolved sage called Dadhichi, also known as Dadhyang. Dadhyang was a sage who is mentioned in the Vedas, Puranas also, and he knew Brahma Vidya. And then the twins, who are seen as the aids, the helpers of Dhanvantari. Dhanvantari is the Lord of healing. So they are physicians, the original physician's assistants, these twins. And they are identical. They look alike. And I don't know what their mother was thinking. She named them both Ashwin. Who is this? Ashwin. And who is this one? Ashwin. So not only you can't tell them apart, I mean, they are just one for all practical purposes. So Ashwin, number 1 and 2, go to Dadhyang to gain this knowledge. Adhihi Bhagavo Brahma, etc., etc. Oh, revered sir, please teach us about Brahman. And Dadhyang, the sage, says, Tathastu. Certainly I will teach you, no problem. Come back on a certain day. They tell him to come back on a certain day. Now, you know how it is if you want something and if you've been promised, especially by a guru, by a teacher, that you will get this, and then to not have that is something which is really it can give a deep sense of betrayal. And so, lo and behold, the Ashwins present themselves in front of their teacher, having chosen Dadhyang as their teacher, and Dadhyang says, not happening. No Brahma Vidya for you. Sorry. And they were devastated. They said, what have we done wrong? And then they said, last time you said you would give and you have to be true to your word. How come you're not giving us this knowledge? What is wrong? What happened? Then Dadhyang says, it's nothing to do with you. You both are so worthy of this knowledge, and I too badly want to teach you. Except in the interim, that's why they say there is many a slip between the cup and the lip. So in the interim, after you came along and asked for the knowledge the first time, and then now when you have presented yourself to receive this knowledge, a lot has transpired. And the teacher was very, very transparent about what had transpired. Another student that I have, a very troublesome fellow, has threatened me that if I teach this knowledge to anyone else after him, he will decapitate me. Off with your head. They said, who can dare to do this to a teacher? Indra, the king of heaven. Indra said, this knowledge is all mine. You can't give this to anybody else. The teacher said, of course the knowledge is yours. If I have given it to you, it is yours. But being limitless, it is for everyone. It is limitless. And it is for everyone. And he said, in your dreams, darling, and if you try to teach this knowledge to anybody, that's all. Finished. Off with your head. And Dadyang said, I'm not afraid of dying. That's not why I'm not teaching you, but I do know that a few more years of my life is left in forms of prarabdha, meaning my life journey is not ended. And if I teach you, and if the fellow swings low, sweet chariot with a sword, and then offs me off, then in order to finish this birth, I'll have to take another birth in order to finish the karmas that are remaining. I'd rather not do that. I'd rather just finish off with this birth and then not have any more births. So therefore, sweet twins, sorry, this is the reason I cannot teach. And then the Ashwins said, in us you have met your match, O sire. Indra has met his match in us. We have an idea. We are not the original surgeons for nothing. So we are going to decapitate you now itself. What? Said Dadiji. Each of my students are turning out to be more colorful than the last. Well, at least he said, if you teach, I will decapitate. Now even without teaching, you are threatening to decapitate me. What is wrong with all the students these days? It is not even Kali Yuga, and the students are turning out to be ingrates. What is wrong? They said, no. Please don't take us amiss. That is not what we meant. We are going to get, in fact, while coming here, we met one freshly dead horse. So we have an idea. We are going to cut your head off right now. And then being physicians, we always carry an ice chest. And then so we are going to put your head on ice and preserve it like nothing happened. And then what? We are going to bring that horse's head that we met on the street, freshly dead, and then attach it to your neck in the first ever history transplant, first ever successful head transplant in history. Then you teach. And then the angry Indra will come with his sword. And he'll be so angry, he will not even see that it's the horse teaching, not you. Because it is attached to your body, he will just commit that adhyasa, he will just, commit a mistake. And then he will cut off the horse's head. Let it go, it was dead to begin with. And then we will get to work, and then we will put on your original head, and you will look as good as new, except for some few stitches here. That's all. You have to be faithful to the story. You have to unpack everything. So a few stitches here, no problem. Who will look? You just wear a polo neck all the time, and don't worry, nobody will see you. And then you can wear a pullover with a that turtleneck, and so nobody will see that. No problem. And so, other than a little scarring, nothing, you will be as good as new. So Dadyang thinks about it and says, this is a very good idea. and the rest of the plan goes infallibly. In fact, we have two successful head transplants in history, in the two successful history Upanishadic head transplants, the one with the horse's head, and then the other one back to the sage Dadhyang's head, and Indra is foiled in his attempt, and Dadhyang is able to successfully teach the Ashwins, and all those who belong to the parampara can say, we got it straight from the horse's head, we got this knowledge straight from the horse's head. And I think this is where the expression comes from, the horse's head. I think it's a borrowed expression. We have to look into this. We have to look into the place where this expression comes from. Straight out of the horse's mouth. How did this come from? Perhaps it came from this, and from this story. We don't know. But somebody can look into it and tell me, not now, next week. Okay, you can tell me, and let's see where this has come from. This is so, so nice. And so this is how the story goes. And then it is said in the Upanishad that he saw Ashwin number 1 and Ashwin number 2 and immediately uttered Rupam Rupam Pratirupam Prapede Pratirupam Babhuva, meaning, look at you. I mean, do you need any other example of how Brahman has as though become many other than you both? You look identical, you behave the same way, you talk alike, you even have the same name, but obviously you are different. But then again, ultimately you are not different, and this is exactly, this is how that explanation has come from. And then go a little below in the teaching of Dadhyang, sage Dadhyang to Ashwins, and you will find that he gives two kinds of definitions of Brahman. The first one is what is called Swarupa Lakshana. The definition that is intrinsic to Brahman itself, meaning without Satyam Jnanam Anantam Satchidananda, no Brahman is possible. Brahman is not possible. It is not possible for Brahman to exist without being an existent being. It is not possible for that to be called Brahman, which is not all knowledge, and it is not possible for that which is limitless, that which is not limitless, to be known as Brahman. This is what is called Swarupa Lakshana. However, this is not enough to ingest the knowledge completely, primarily because we live in a manifest universe, and we have to account for all names and forms, and as well as the creator, quote unquote, manifester of all the names and forms. So the second lakshana, or the second definition, is called Tatastha Lakshana, a time-bound definition. This definition of Brahman, Ishvara, lasts as long as the universe is manifest. And when the universe is no longer manifest, we go back to the Swarupa Lakshana. So right now, Brahman that we encounter as the Jagat, is both recognized by Swarupa Lakshana as the truth of oneself, and the Tatastha Lakshana, which accounts for this ruler, ruled, devotee, object of devotion, and all these differences. And so what is this Tatastha Lakshana? The Tatastha Lakshana says that this Brahman is the source from which all beings have come, by which all beings are sustained, and unto which all beings resolve. In the third chapter of the Taittiriya Upanishad, this is given very nicely. Yato va imani bhutani jayante ye na jatani jivanti yat prayantyabhisam vishanti. And tad vijijñāsasva, know that tad Brahma, that is Brahman, from which everything, bhutani, the elements and things that have come out of the elements, like the human body, etc., jayante, from which all beings, the elements and the elementals, have come forth. Yena jatani jivanti, from which all those things that have been born are sustained. Yat prayanti abhisam vishanti, that that in which all those things resolve after their purpose is done. Tad vijignyasasva, please know that, and know that to be Brahman, to be Bhagavan. Please know that to be Bhagavan. And so this is the second Swarupa Tatastha Lakshana that is there, where he in the second sentence here. No, we'll skip to the third sentence because it comes from the same place in the Upanishad. So line 50, verse 50, line 3, we will skip to. And then since the water and the since line 2 comes from a different place in the same Upanishad, we'll talk about that separately. It's a different dialogue. So rupam rupam pratirupam babhuva tad achakshanaaya tad etad achakshanaaya indro mayabhihi pururupam iyate. That is the full vakya. And so here it is split by another sentence in the Upanishad. So we'll take line number 3 first and then go back to line number 2. So line number 3, Indro mayabhihi aste. Indra here is not the king of heaven, but it's a name for Bhagavan, the Lord. The Lord aste is what? With Maya. In fact, with many Mayas. Even one Maya is difficult to cross. What to do with many Mayas? It shows that Maya in the form of Ichha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti. The power to desire, to contemplate, and the power to manifest, visualize, and Jnana Shakti, the power of knowledge, the all knowledge, and Kriya Shakti, the power to manifest this universe. So these are all feminine forces, and they make Bhagavan really. They make Brahman into Bhagavan. So this Lord, along with Maya, abides as the universe, manifests as the universe. Shrutihi iti vadati. Shruti says like this. Therefore what? Vyapakam Brahma tasmat. So therefore Brahman, which is Satchidananda, is all pervasive, is everywhere. Wherever you look, it is Brahman. Wherever you look, it is Ishvara, Ishvara, Ishvara. Ishvara is naturally with Maya. So when you see a flower, you see that knowledge of Ishvara which is manifest as the flower. You see how cleverly the petals are there, and the petals are colorful to attract insects and butterflies, so that, and birds, so that it will help in propagation of the species. And there is a fragrance to attract the bees, because bees are an important part of the ecosystem. Without the bees we would all die. And so they keep everything going. And then there is, and then the pollen is carried, the seeds are carried to various places, all for the suraksha, the protection and the propagation of the species. Then you find that the flower has, certain flowers require sunlight, and so you see them, the plant, the intelligence of the plant in turning towards the sun. Sunflowers do this, lotuses do this. In fact, lotuses bloom only when there is sunlight, and as the sun goes down, they close up. Very beautiful. So there, and then there are, there is that intelligence of Bhagavan in the form of the plant life. Very, very beautiful. And then the creepers. Creepers also will find a way to get the most of the sunlight. And you see them, and then they will, you see them one day, and then let's say they are curling, the tendrils are curling towards us, a stick there that you have planted. Let's say you unfurl it deliberately and put it somewhere else where there is not enough light, and 2 days later they are back. How? When? Nobody knows. But they are back. climbing in a particular way. And scientists have done this, botanists have done this experiment time and again, where they have tried to redirect the plants from a certain way. The wind blows from a certain way. Wind changes, but predominantly in an area the wind generally blows a certain way, and they have tried to change the course of these plants and creepers by even tying them to other plants and other poles and everything. Still somehow they will break loose, because that intelligence of Ishvara is clearly visible. And then so therefore, wherever you look, you see the knowledge of Bhagavan, and whatever exists is the existence of Bhagavan, and whatever shines is just Bhagavan. So therefore, Brahman is all pervasive. So the other two lines will carry over for next week. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you. Take care.